The movie begins in 1990 where we see a boy called Christopher who impresses his teacher by completing an exam in just a few hours, but that exam took Einstein 3 days to finish. His sister Michelle feels sad that he could go to college before she could, but Christopher says that he doesn't feel like going to college, leaving her behind. While they are on their way, a soldier calls out Christopher for wearing a t-shirt with a robot image on it. The soldier scolds Christopher, reminding him that a war with the robots is coming. The robot on the t-shirt is called Cosmo, and it is the protagonist of a famous cartoon show. But because of the anti-robot sentiment developing around the nation, the cartoon show got cancelled. Going back to their origin, the robots were first developed by Walt Disney for their parks in the 1950s, and seeing their usefulness, they were later put into mass production to become the main source of the workforce around the world. For many years, the robots worked without causing any issues, but suddenly they got tired of working and started to rebel. The robots demanded their own rights, and they even organized protests all over the world, led by their leader called Peanut. As the debates go nowhere, a war soon begins between humans and robots. It was considered that any human keeping a robot at home will be treated as a traitor. However, the war isn't going well for humans, and a Sergeant John explains on TV why they are losing. It is because the robots can go on and on without eating or sleeping. For 2 years, humanity fought the robots only to lose in the end. But one day, the founder of Center Technologies called Ethan makes a discovery. He invents a device called Neural that links the human mind to robot bodies. By using this invention, the humans can now fight the robots using robots controlled by human minds. So in just 2 weeks, the war with the robots is over with the humans' victory. Commander Bradbury is named humanity's hero, and the Peanut meets with the president and Ethan to sign the Treaty of Surrender. After this, over 6,000 robots are imprisoned in the desert, where they designate as the exclusion zone. After all this, Ethan releases a smaller version of the Neural for ordinary people. Using this allows the people to split their brains work, which allows them to work and have fun at the same time. The scene changes to the year 1994, where we see Mitchell at home trying to remove her ankle monitor, but she hides the tools when her Uncle Ted barges into her room using his Neural. He scolds her for not listening to him and reminds her that she can try to escape like she did from her previous foster homes, but she cannot do that with him here. Michelle leaves, telling him that all the stuff he has gathered here from the exclusion zone is illegal, but he tells her that there is no problem in taking something that nobody else wants. After this, Michelle goes to class and the teacher tells all the students to put on their Neurals for their class. All the students are forced to put on their Neurals since it is compulsory, but Michelle refuses to put on hers, and because of this, she is sent to the principal's office. The principal, Miss Sablinski, sees Michelle's profile and notices that she lost her entire family because of the war. Hearing this, Michelle clarifies, stating that it was actually a car accident that took her entire family. Then Miss Sablinski explains that using the Neural will help her forget her past trauma, and this causes Michelle to think back on the memory of her playing with her brother on the beach. On that day, he had a panic attack and Michelle comforted him through it. Seeing her lost in thought, Miss Sablinski calls her and Michelle refuses to put on the Neural before leaving for home. That night, Michelle dreams of the car accident that killed her family. She remembers waking up in a hospital but cannot see the face of the doctor watching her. As she tries hard to remember, she is startled awake by a noise outside her house. She looks out the window and notices something moving in her yard. So she takes a flashlight and goes out to see what it is. She is startled to see an eye reflected on a bottle, and immediately the table turns over. This scares her and she immediately runs back inside the house. Michelle tries to warn Ted about the intruder, but he is lost in the Neural and doesn't come to his senses. When Michelle hears the intruder break into the house, she runs to her room to hide under her bed. However, the intruder is a robot and easily lifts the bed to look at her. Seeing the robot looking like Cosmo, Michelle runs to the corner of the room and tries to scare the robot off. But Cosmo uses some gestures to convey that he came here looking for her. Seeing that Cosmo cannot speak, Michelle asks what's wrong, and Cosmo opens his head so that Michelle can fix his voice circuit. But unfortunately, he only has a few pre-recorded lines, and Cosmo grabs a picture of Michelle and her brother, and it points to Christopher and itself, implying that he is her brother. Michelle cannot believe this and tries to take away the picture from Cosmo, but this causes Cosmo to fall back and crash against the shelves. The noise finally wakes up Ted and he comes to the room to find Mitchell with a robot, and he blames her for bringing in a robot knowing that it is illegal. In the heat of the argument, Ted pushes her against the robot and Cosmo makes the same gesture that Christopher used to make, convincing Michelle that it is her brother. Cosmo then runs over to push Ted out of her room. This causes Ted to get furious and he grabs a golf club to hit the robot. But Cosmo breaks the club and pushes Ted again, injuring him this time. Finally, Ted grabs the phone to inform the authorities, but Michelle uses a taser to stop him from doing so. After Michelle and Cosmo get in Ted's car, and Cosmo easily removes the ankle monitor on Michelle. She tells Cosmo that she doesn't know how to drive, but she improvises when Ted's drone comes after them. Michelle manages to throw Ted off and they manage to leave the area. The next morning, the car stops in the middle of the road because of a flat tire. Michelle gets out to check the trunk, but finds that they don't have a spare. So she starts questioning Cosmo and the robot explains that her brother is still alive and is controlling him from there. So Michelle asks how to find him and Cosmo points at the board of the center technology. He uses a Dr. Pepper can and more signaling to indicate a doctor wearing glasses. Only then does Michelle's memory after the accident get clear and she remembers Dr. Amherst informing her about her brother's death. Then Michelle takes out a map and Cosmo points at a spot called Tabletop in the middle of the exclusion zone. Since they will need a plan to break into such a dangerous place, Michelle remembers that Ted had things he got from the exclusion zone in his trunk. Michelle finds a box in the trunk with the sender's address in New Mexico, so she suggests they find that person to get inside the exclusion zone. So after this, Michelle and Cosmo sneak into a train and they go halfway, and for the remaining half they continue on foot. In the evening they reach the address and Michelle stops by a store for food, but when she comes out she notices a truck pulling in, so she drags Cosmo along into an alley to hide. The driver turns out to be Sergeant John, who we saw on the TV during the war. He turns out to be the owner of the address Michelle came here looking for. Right then, a neural drone appears and he buys a weapon from John, but it tries to pull one on John to get the money back. But John leans to the side and an electric shock from the back of his truck zaps out the neural drone. This was done by Herman, a robot John keeps around as his helper. As Herman helps John move the neural out of the way, Michelle and Cosmo sneak inside the truck. Meanwhile, we find the neural drone of the Commander Bradbury inspecting Ted's car abandoned by Mitchell. The next day, the truck arrives at an old mine near the exclusion zone. John and Herman move their things inside the mine, unaware that Mitchell and Cosmo are hiding inside a box in the truck. While John and Herman are distracted in an argument, Mitchell and Cosmo try to get out unnoticed, but Cosmo accidentally activates as a singing fish toy and gives away their presence. John and Herman surround them and Mitchell explains that she wants him to be their guide into the exclusion zone, but John rejects her, saying that she is crazy. Right at that moment, the elevator goes up and John thinks someone followed them there. As they hide when the elevator comes down, we find that Bradbury's neural drone has arrived. He announces that this place is now under the jurisdiction of the government and makes John and Michelle come out with their hands raised. John tries to pretend that Michelle is his sister, but Bradbury recognizes Michelle and says that she's under arrest for sheltering a robot. Right then, Herman tries to shoot Bradbury with his electric beam, but Bradbury senses this and uses John as a shield. After this, Bradbury opens fire, destroying the room. In the chaos, Bradbury manages to corner the robots and Michelle comes out to hit his arm with a fire extinguisher, but Bradbury grabs it from her and crushes the fire extinguisher to make the room filled with smoke. Hearing John, Michelle claps her hands to turn off the lights there and the fish toys start singing, which distracts Bradbury. Using this chance, John shoots him from behind, but his bullets do nothing to the neural drone. Bradbury manages to capture John and seeing this, Michelle and Cosmo agree to surrender. Bradbury throws John away and starts walking toward them, saying that Cosmo needs to be deactivated. At that moment, Herman makes a huge claw fall and stops Bradbury in his track. They then get onto a mining car to escape through the mines, but John takes his own time to find the keys. This gives Bradbury enough time to put the claw away, and he shoots the mining car. He then tries to shoot Cosmo, but Herman jumps to disarm him, and now Herman and Cosmo start fighting him. Michelle uses this chance to start a bulldozer there and crashes into Bradbury, forcing him into the wall, and this causes the rocks to fall on the drone. Because of this, the mine's roof starts crumbling and the group manages to escape outside just in time. Seeing his precious home destroyed, John screams in frustration and yells at Michelle for ruining everything, but he is interrupted by noises nearby. So they run to hide in a nearby cave, and it turns out to be scavenger robots going around looking for parts to fix themselves. John goes out to destroy these robots, and he goes to his garage where he keeps a van and a suit for Herman to make himself bigger. After convincing John to help her, we see Michelle, Cosmo and John inside the van while Herman in his suit carries them inside the exclusion zone. Michelle sees all the destroyed robots around them on their way, and John decides to share his story of how he met Herman during the war. While John's team lost a battle and was surrounded by the robots, he thought they were all going to die, but Herman decided to save him instead. So John tried his best to tell his superiors that Herman is a good robot, but they were against him having a robot. So John and Herman ran away to survive and lived together ever since. Meanwhile, we find Ethan, the creator of Neurer, reliving a memory with his deceased mother, but his Neurer starts malfunctioning and stops working. Ethan yells at his scientists and demands to know what's causing the problem, and it is here revealed that Christopher has escaped, and if they don't find him in a few days, their entire system will collapse. Hearing this, Ethan meets with Bradbury in the virtual world, and Ethan tells Bradbury to capture Cosmo and hand him over to his company instead of deactivating him. Soon Bradbury's Neurer is activated again in the collapsed mine. At this time, John and Mitchell reach the area near an abandoned mall inside the exclusion zone. He tells her that they could get in there to look for food, but they are noticed by the robots who attack them by throwing fridges at them. Herman tries running away, but the oncoming things hit him, causing him to fall and drop the van. Soon they are surrounded by many robots who capture them and take them to the mall. Inside the mall, there is a whole society of robots living there, and there's even a giant one looking from the outside. Their leader Peanut shows up and apologizes for capturing them, saying that the robots thought they were enemies. Mitchell explains her situation to Peanut, and he reveals that he knew Dr. Armour, who once came here regarding his research on human machine interaction, but Peanut also says that he drove him away and hasn't seen him ever since. However, Michelle wants to go to the place Cosmo pointed to, and John reminds her that it is dangerous for them to leave at night and convinces her to stay there till the morning. That night, Michelle thinks about the last Christmas she spent with Christopher, and after he went to college, how little she saw him. She cannot help but cry thinking about this, and Cosmo comes to comfort her, and he plays the cartoon they used to watch together as kids. Soon the other robots join them as well, and this is noticed by Peanut. After everyone falls asleep, they are awakened suddenly by a robot asking for Christopher. Cosmo raises his hand, and the robot gives him a postcard that Dr. Armour left for him with an address on it and a note saying that the doctor will be waiting for him. Seeing that the address is within the scavenger robot's territory, John says that it is too dangerous for them. However, Peanut overhears everything and calls for a baseball robot to help them with the fighting. John doesn't believe in the robot but gets surprised as the robot starts shooting out baseballs at high speeds. In the morning, Bradbury's drone reaches the site outside the mall, and he notices the group leaving the place in Peanut's car. The journey takes them the whole day, and they reach their destination by night time. It is an abandoned amusement park, and Michelle spots one area where the lights are on and thinks that is where the doctor might be. But suddenly they are surrounded by creepy robots, and the group starts running as they fight the robots along their way. Peanut even tries to communicate with them, but the robots don't stop and continue to attack them. The group makes it to the place with the lights on, but Mitchell finds that the door is fake. The robots surround them and come closer. While this is happening, the group doesn't know what to do. But suddenly more lights turn on and the music starts playing, which disturbs the surrounding robots, and they back off in fear. Right then, a trapdoor opens under them and they slide down into an underground room where they finally find Dr. Armour. He gets excited after seeing the letter in Cosmo's hand, and Mitchell immediately pushes him and demands information investigation on her brother. Dr. Armour then reveals that Christopher is in a lab in Seattle. He says that after the accident, Christopher was put through some tests and he alerted the hospital that Christopher was special, and because of this they decided to allow Ethan to take her brother while he lied to her that her brother died in the accident. The doctor then activates his computer and that plays a video of Christopher at the center, and even though they thought that he will permanently be in a coma, soon after they connected him to the network, Christopher woke up, and even though the doctor wanted to stop this, Ethan pointed out that it is necessary to save the world and refused to let him go, and he even threatened to kill the doctor. So the doctor decided to escape, and before he left he established a connection between her brother and the outside network. The doctor also programmed to make him find the robots in the exclusion zone so that he could have his own family, but Michelle gets angry saying that he already had one. John stops her and punches the doctor in her place. Right at that moment, Bradbury arrives outside and shoots the entrance to enter the underground room, but he finds it empty and the lights go out and Peanut comes out to tackle Bradbury. He pushes Bradbury against the electrical grid set up there, which electrocutes Bradbury's neural drone, and he drops his weapon. But it doesn't stop him from pushing Peanut off to recover, and the two continue to fight. Bradbury is stronger and he manages to easily overpower Peanut. At this time, the rest of the group go outside but are surrounded by soldier drones who arrive carried by the other drones. They ask our group to surrender, but the baseball robot starts shooting balls and manages to break a few of the newer drones. Ethan sees this from his lab and orders everyone to do whatever it takes to capture Cosmo. Cosmo throws a ball to distract a soldier and Michelle appears behind him shooting paintballs until his drone malfunctions and he crashes into the ceiling. When a second soldier tries to capture her, the doctor shoots him down and tells them he knows a way out. While John and the other robots keep on fighting, Bradbury rips Peanut's hat off in the underground room. At the same time, a bunch of soldiers arrive there and Bradbury comes out and starts shooting at attractions randomly. The doctor tells everyone to run while he comes to confront Bradbury, while Bradbury hesitates to attack a fellow human. Ethan brings his neural drone and shoots at the doctor. Sadly, the doctor falls back on some debris and it impales the doctor, killing him. Michelle and Cosmo try to run away, but they are surrounded by soldiers. One of them holds Michelle down while another takes Cosmo and flies away. Bradbury shoots the drone grabbing onto Michelle and flies away telling her to return home. In the morning, the group returns to the mall and finds it in ruins with most of the robots destroyed. Meanwhile, Cosmo is taken to the center labs to reunite with Christopher's body. Bradbury realizes that he was lied to and Cosmo isn't just a robot. He gets angry at Ethan for this, but Ethan reminds him that this boy is the reason they won the war, and he claims that sacrifice is required to achieve anything. Back in the mall, John tells Michelle that she shouldn't give up and that he will help her if she decides to keep on fighting. So Michelle checks the doctor's robot and confirms that he has left the location of the center lab and that if they disconnect Christopher from the network, the entire neural system will be shut down. But Peanut explains that they cannot fight since they signed the treaty to achieve peace. But Michelle reminds him that the treaty is already broken since the humans attacked them first. So using the available trucks near the mall, the robots make their way to the center lab. After they reach the place, we find that Herman found a new giant suit and uses it to start throwing cars at the lab. Ethan immediately sends his guards to fight the robot. Herman and John lead them away, creating a way for Michelle and the doctor's robot to enter the lab. Outside, John shoots at the incoming drones while Herman smashes them with his huge hands. But one of the neurons self-destructs and brings Herman's suit down. At this time, another drone tackles John, but Herman pops up in another suit which was inside the huge one and saves John. Soon the rest of the robots also join the fight. Ethan sees this on his screen and puts on his neural and activates a special drone and joins the fight to bring down the robots easily. In the lab, the doctor's robot pretends to be crazy and scares the scientists there. Michelle finally sees that her brother is alive, but to talk to him she will have to put on a neural to enter the virtual world. At this time, Bradbury reaches the battlefield and finds Peanut. He tells him where to find Ethan, saying that Ethan is no human in his eyes. Bradbury then disconnects his neural, finally quitting the war. Back to Michelle, she puts on the neural and finds herself in the memory of her last Christmas with her brother. She tells Christopher that she wants to save him, but he explains that his body is weak and disconnecting him will only kill him. But he tells her that he doesn't want to live the rest of his life in this state. So he tells her to do what is needed. Meanwhile, Ethan's drone manages to destroy Herman's final suit. John rushes to help him, but it is too late. Right then, Peanut manages to enter the building and finds Ethan saying that they need to rethink about the treaty. In the lab, Michelle refuses to disconnect her brother because she doesn't want to lose him again. But Christopher insists that he hasn't felt anything in years and he cannot be saved anymore. But he reminds her that the ones outside need the help. After shedding tears, Michelle finally bids her goodbye to her brother and returns to the real world. She disconnects him from the network and all the neurons instantly go offline. The robots celebrate their victory, but John is still sad over losing Herman. But Herman's head suddenly opens up, revealing a tiny robot inside. Soon chaos occurs all over the world as all the neurons stop working, and the news covers the story about Ethan's experiment on a human child. Ethan is arrested for this, and John and the robots help Mitchell make a video in the exclusion zone asking people to let go of their seats and come out to feel the world once again. Meanwhile, Cosmo is thrown in the trash and the movie ends as its head starts to move again. That is it for this recap, guys. Let me know your thoughts in the comments and make sure to leave a like to help the channel out and make my day, and please subscribe to the channel as well. I will see you in the next recap, and until then, this is your host for Movie Recap signing off. Thanks for watching.